So you're going to need one zipper and two pieces of interfacing. I cut my interfacing about an inch wide, and then you want it to be like about as long as your zipper. It's not an exact science, but basically I cut it just the same length as my zipper tape. So you're going to have two of those in your zipper, and what we're going to do is we're going to iron the interfacing onto the edge of the shoulder seams, which I've also gone ahead and finished those raw edges. So I finished the raw edges on both the arm and on the bodice piece here. So I finished both of those, so they're nice once we've sewn them in. So we're gonna you're gonna iron the interfacing on from where your collar gets folded over. So find that point, and that's where you're gonna start your interfacing. And then you're just gonna line it up along the edge here. And it's not going to be perfectly straight since the collar does kind of go in a little bit. So just do your best to put it on there. It doesn't have to be perfect. So you'll go ahead and iron that onto both sides of the shoulder seam. And make sure that your collar, again, stays up when you iron those on. Okay, so I've gone ahead and ironed my interfacing on to both sides. So now we're going to start kind of making some marks on that interfacing. That's going to tell us where we're going to sew this zipper on. So to start with, you're going to kind of look at your zipper and determine where the top of the zipper is. So where you want, the top of it to come on your collar. So you have kind of the two little ends, and so that you're going to kind of want to line those up maybe just a touch below where the fold goes on your collar. So I like to kind of fold it over a little bit and then line it up and kind of move it over onto here so that I know where it's going to start. And then you're going to kind of line it up all the way down to the end. And you're going to want to mark right where that end of your zipper is. I'm going to kind of put a mark right there. So that's going to be the end of my zipper. Now I'm going to want to make sure that that mark is in the same place on both sides. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this over so that I can align the sides. So I'm going to start by lining up my collar edges, because when I sew that zipper, that's going to be one of my most critical points, is that the bottom of the collar lines up. So I'm going to line that up. Then I'm going to line this up here. And then I'm going to mark right on here where that edge is as well. So now both of my edge points have been marked, and I'm just going to again verify that they're in the right spot, which they are. So now that we've got those marked, the next step is going to be determining how much of the zipper tape you want to show. I like to do about 3/8 of an inch. So get a little ruler and line it up with the middle of your zipper tape, and kind of determine where you want that zipper tape to show. So you can see here where I have this purple mark, that's how much I want to show. But you also need to account for the actual seam allowance of the pattern, which is 3/8 of an inch. So you're going to move your little marker 3/8 of an inch over, and that's where we're going to draw a line. So again, you do whatever you want to have showing, however much of that you want to show. So for me, it was 3/8. And then your seam allowance, which is 3/8. So I'm going to have 6/8 of an inch or 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to mark that all the way along this edge. So I'm going to take my little marker. I'm just going to mark all the way down this edge. where 3/4 of an inch is. And you're going to do that on both sides. So I'm going to take my other side. I can find it. There's a lot of fabric with this. And again, just mark. And you can connect those dots if you'd like, just to make it easier, because the next step we're going to sew those lines. So go ahead and connect them. So what we're going to do, we're going to sew this line and this line on both pieces. Okay, so I went ahead and I did the stitching line right along where I had my marker marks. So the next step, we're going to line up the bottom edge really carefully. You want to make sure that it's right on top of your other line of stitching. So I like to stick a pin right through the bottom part, and then I'm going to do that again on the other side, so I know that they're lined up exactly. And then what we're going to do, so we've got that lined up there, we're going to sew using our regular sewing machine, not your serger. You're going to sew a 3/8 inch seam allowance up until the bottom of that zipper mark. So just from the edge to there, and the part where we're going to have the zipper, you're not going to sew. You're going to sew right up until the bottom of your stitch line, and then you'll stop right there. Okay, so now that you have sewn right up until that point, right on the bottom of your stitching mark, we're going to cut a little triangle into both sides. So what you're going to do, you're just going to take your scissors and just cut right up until your stitch line in the corner right there, and you're going to do it on both sides. Okay, and once you've done that, we're going to go ahead and press all the seams open. Now that we've cut those little triangles, we're going to bring it over here and we're going to press all the seams. So I'm just going to press this one open. This is the one that we just sewed. And I'm just pressing it open, and then I'm going to push these sides right where we have our stitch line. We're going to press right along that edge, press our fabric down on both sides as well. And you're going to go ahead and kind of continue that up the side, including the part that we did not interface, that's going to get folded over at the end. Just kind of want to get a nice press in there so that when we fold it over, it's already pressed. So we're going to do that on both sides. Just right along that line of stitches. So now we're going to be attaching the zipper, and so what you're going to want to do is start by flipping your top right side out, and you'll see your little triangular pieces, and we're going to be attaching the bottom of the zipper to those triangle pieces. So you want to lay it out with again, the right side of your fabric out and the zipper facing right side up. And you're going to line up, you're going to actually flip the zipper so that the right side is facing the right side of your fabric. And then we're going to take a pin and you're going to just pin it right on the edge of that stitching, right to just those triangular pieces that we just cut. And you're going to sew, now you're going to just flip it up just to make sure that you're lined up correctly. I need to kind of move mine a little bit. It needs to line up right on that stitching. So I'm going to make sure that I'm right even with that. Pin it, flip it up to check. Still a little too far. Okay, so I think I finally got it. Yep. And again, you also want to make sure that that your zipper teeth are lined up. The middle of the zipper teeth is lined up with the middle seam right here as well. So now we're just going to flip this inside out again, and we're going to sew just right along that line of stitches again right here, just to attach the zipper to those two triangular pieces. Okay, so I went ahead and I attached it just to those little wings on the wrong side, so you can see that there, and then I'm just flipping it right side out so you can see it here. So again, you only want to attach it to the wings. If you attach it to any of the other fabric, then it'll pull weird and you'll have to take that stitching out and redo it. So the next step we're going to be doing is we're going to be just attaching the zipper to either side of here. And so for that, we're going to use hem tape, and you're just going to want to kind of lay it out on the sides here. This is really easy. You can also use like just a plain glue stick if you don't have the hem tape. I use that a lot, and I've always been really happy with the result of that. So I've got the hem tape kind of laid out there, and I'm just going to kind of take my shirt and I'm just going to press down right along that hem tape. And then I'll do it again on the other side. The great thing about this is you don't need to use pins or clips or anything. You just use this tape and it will hold it in place, no problem. And this will allow you to also make sure that the collar is in the right place. So when you line this up, you're going to want to make sure that these 2 points on your collar are right across from each other. And so right now they are on my with my hem tape. They're just being held in place right there. And then when you go to sew it, you're going to sew. We're going to flip it wrong sides out again. And we're going to attach it just right against that seam line or that row of stitches that we stitched before. So you're going to use your zipper foot and you're going to stitch just right along this edge here where you see your stitch line. Okay, so I figured I would show you guys how I go ahead and sew this. It might be a little easier than just describing it. So I have my fabric here. Again, I just use the hem tape to kind of hold this in place here. I'm going to flip it to the wrong side. I'm going to just align I have my zipper foot on here, and I'm going to take this and line up my foot with that edge of stitching that we did before, where we just basted a line on there. So I'm going to start it right there, and I'm going to just sew again right along that line of stitches that we had made. So I'm just going right along that edge, right along that line of stitches, The hem tape is holding it in place. Just going all the way up that line of stitches. And I'm going to get to my zipper and I'm going to have to move it. And so for that, I'm just going to lift up my presser foot all the way up. And I'm just going to slowly manipulate it, move it back. Make sure that I realign everything. And just finish up sewing to that point. Now that you've gone ahead and attached the zipper to both sides, right along our little sewn basted edge there, we're going to flip it right side out again so you can see your zipper on the top. And we're going to work on attaching the rest of our collar. So we still have these pieces, that are kind of overlapping, and we did this on purpose. It'll give us a nice clean edge and make it so that the zipper doesn't bother your neck. So what you're going to do, you've got your two kind of sides here, and it also kind of, naturally wants to fold along the edge of where we had sewn the zipper in. So we're going to keep that fold in place, and we're going to fold, you're going to also fold the tape down on the inside, and you're going to fold the rest of the collar right over top of it like this. And then you're going to pin it in place, making sure that, let me see if I can show you. Flip it right, wrong side again. So we've got our collar edge here, and we're going to fold this down over right along that folded edge. And we're going to make sure that it covers that little seam there. So you're going to pin it in place like that. And so go ahead and pin both sides. You might need to kind of just keep adjusting it a little bit until you get it perfect. And so once we've pinned those in place, we're going to again do it on both sides. And then we're going to just top stitch all the way around our zipper. And that's going to hold the collar in place. Make sure that your sides are the same. You want to make sure that they're even. So there we have it kind of pinned in place. I'm going to flip it right side out and make sure I like the way that it's kind of laying. So yeah, I think that looks good. So I'm going to start at one side and I'm going to just top stitch all the way around the zipper to the other side. And make sure that you're catching this back edge when you do that. So this is kind of tricky to do, and you're going to want to make sure that you open up your zipper just to give yourself a little bit of flexibility when you're trying to make sure that you don't sew over any of the other sides of the fabric. So I like to kind of line up my the inside edge of my metal part on my foot with the edge of the fabric. And then I'm just kind of gonna start, and I like to do, if you start with a small stitch length, like 1 or 1.5, you don't have to back stitch. And so that's something that I learned that has been really helpful to me. And I feel like it kind of gives you a little bit more of a professional look as well, because you don't see the lines where you back stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and start with a small seam allowance, or sorry, not seam allowance, but stitch length. And now I'm going to go up to about a 3. And just go nice and slow, making sure that you're catching your edges. And again, we're just going to go all the way around. might, when you get to the zipper, might need to kind of adjust a little bit, kind of zip past it for a second, and again making sure that I'm not catching any of my actual shirt. And I'm gonna get to here, I'm gonna turn, make sure that my pieces are all laying flat. Turn it again. This is a lot of fabric that you're kind of trying to wrangle. And again, I'm just going to make sure that I'm all lined up. I'm going to catch my edge. And then when I get back to this top, I'm going to switch again to a smaller stitch length, finish it off. And there we go. So now that we've got that all sewn up, we're going to be sewing this, the rest of the collar down over the top of that mark there. Okay, so now we're going to be working on attaching the rest of our collar down over the top of our collar of our seam where we had originally attached it. So for this, you're gonna have to kind of stretch the collar a little bit just to get it to fit correctly. So what I recommend is kind of doing it in stages. So start at one side and kind of start pinning, and then also you'll kind of go back and forth between the sides. My dog is trying to help us as well. So I'm just going to kind of pin that side, and then I'm going to come over here and do the same thing here. Kind of stretching it just slightly so that it fits. And we're just going right over the edge of that, that seam. Just kind of pull it a little bit. Go back to the other side. Stretching just slightly. So you're not stretching it a ton, you're just barely pulling it. So I think that's probably good. And so now what you're going to do is you're going to just stitch right along. I like to stitch just right above my the line where they were originally attached, and you'll just stitch right along that all the way around, making sure to catch that entire edge. Okay, so I'm going to start at this edge. And again, I'm going to start with a small stitch length. Go a little bit longer. You can also baste this at first just to make sure that you like where it is. Again, just go nice and slow. Check and make sure I'm catching my edge, and I am. Pin needs switching back to a small stitch. Okay. So there we go, we're all attached. So there's a few spots where I kind of missed my edge that I'm going to go back and kind of fix. But that's how you attach the collar. So there we go. So tomorrow we will talk about how to get the rest of the sides sewn up with your pockets. So we'll see you tomorrow.